hear so many people ask, should we be using AI in HR? And that's the wrong question, in my opinion. It's a resounding yes, you should be using AI in HR. But what I would say is, how ready is your HR function for AI? But regardless, yes, there are certainly ways that I want to see you use it. So, welcome back to another episode of Don't Waste the Chaos. I'm your host, Kerri Roberts. I've been doing human resources for over 20 years. I've been utilizing AI in human resources for, I want to say AI in the terms of what you're thinking. I've been doing it for 3 years, but we've been using AI with HR payroll software, with, let's say, like Society of Human Resource Management, or some of the, like, Hello HR, some of those websites. We've been using AI because we're prompting a question and then it's spitting us out a template. So there have been versions of this that's been going on for a really long time. The reporting features that go on inside of HR payroll technology, whereas, you put in that you are declining a candidate and it automatically sends them a declination, and there's templates built in and language built in. This has been going on, but the way that you're thinking about AI right now when you're listening to this episode, I've been doing it for 3 years. And I started out with ChatGPT, and now I use ChatGPT and Claude, some Gemini, a few other tools. I mean, obviously, there's a ton out there. I'm not here to promote one specific tool. I'm here to talk to you about AI in HR in general. And what I'm doing is kicking off, I think it's going to be a 12-part series. And I'm smiling when I say that because I just did what I was calling a 13-part series on the HR foundations, and it ended up being 14 episodes because I had just a little bit more that I wanted to share, and I could have kept going. And so I'm going to say this is a 12-part series. And I know that seems long, but the reality of it is, when I started thinking through the aspects of artificial intelligence in human resources, what the implications are, what to consider, the questions we need to ask, how to implement, what the policies might look like, it became long. There were just a lot of aspects that I wanted to cover. And so that's exactly what we're going to do. And we're starting out this episode with just maybe like a readiness test, maybe a little bit of an audit, because I want to ask you some questions to get you thinking about how you already are using it, what your HR foundation looks like, how it can look. And so this is just to get your brain kind of rolling around the concept. I would be floored if you're not using it at all in any capacity right now. But I mean, to each their own. I listened to a podcast episode yesterday of a woman, I would say, in a high power position in a large company. She's 40 years old, and it's an innovative company, I would say, but she's not using AI at all. And it surprised me because I was an early adopter. I would call myself a little bit of an enthusiast. And yes, there are security issues that come up and things you need to do to be proactive to safeguard yourself. I'm not saying like just willy-nilly, let's go throwing all this stuff into HR or AI. We're going to talk about that a lot more. But in general, it's where it's at, friends. When I look at my consulting revenue and how it's helped me, first and foremost, I don't have any full-time or part-time employees anymore. Right now, I've got a summer intern, and that's it. And this time last year, I had 2 part to full-time employees and a summer intern. So it's saving me over 60, around $70,000 annually just in people alone. So if that doesn't get your attention, if you're a small to mid-sized business owner and you're thinking about how AI can have financial implications, there's a bunch, and we're going to get into them, but that's just one right there. And if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, thanks, Kerri, I'm an HR person and you're talking about eliminating me. No. I'm not eliminating myself, right? I am the HR consultant. I didn't eliminate myself. I streamlined and automated how I'm coming to the market, and my revenue is going to almost double this year. Hear me on that. So I'm automating my admin, my marketing, and all of these things. There's things to automate that don't replace you. They make you far more efficient, far more effective. And so I'm so excited to get into this with you. I love AI. I use it every single day in my business. I use it every single day for my clients. And so when someone's asking me, like, should we use AI in HR? Like, yeah. But before you get into that thing, let's run this little audit, this little assessment to see how AI ready your HR function already is. So here's the 5-question AI, let's call it readiness test, that I want you to think through. Is there a documented process that AI can actually learn from, or does it all live in your head? That's the first question. Now, here's what I would say. If it does all live in your head, that's okay. You can click that little microphone button either on your phone or on your computer, and you can dictate to AI, and it can actually help you get to writing standard operating procedures. So that's not something that should deter you. If it's all in your head right now, fine. AI can help you with that. Is it going to be able to help you with your HR function to start out with? No, but it's going to help you standardize your HR function and your processes so then it can make an impact. You see where I'm going with this? It's a total game changer. So let me give you an example. This is no different than when I have clients implement an HR payroll software. They want to implement the software because they think it's going to make their life easier, and it is. But when the implementation analyst says, "What are your holiday policies?" And you're like, "Well, in general, it's this." It's like, well, we need to know what your policy is so we can set it up when it comes to paid time off, sick leave. Do you have bereavement leave? What about USERA leave? Do you have unpaid time off? What's Family Medical Leave Act look like? Does your company qualify for that based on size? And if not, what about ADA leave? Do you have personal leave? Do you allow sabbaticals? Like, if you don't know the answers to those questions, then your HR payroll implementation analyst can't really set your system up very well. They can say, like, in general, this is what people do, but they don't know how your business runs. Same thing. They're running through an implementation and they're like, okay, let's get your benefits enrollment set up. What are your benefits? I'm not 100% sure what comes out of each paycheck. I don't know. We're going to have to ask about that. And when are your employees eligible? Is there a wait period? Do you send COBRA paperwork out, or does a vendor do that for you right now? Like, there's all kinds of questions. So they can set up your benefits enrollment, but they need the structure from you. Let's keep moving in that same vein. Okay, let's set up your performance review process. Right now, who executes the performance review? Does an employee do a self-evaluation? If yes, then when does it go to the manager? When does the employee get notified that the review's done? Is it a 3-point scale, a 5-point scale, a 10-point scale? Do you want to add math to it and weighting so that way it spits out a potential raise pool at the end of it? What are the questions that you ask? All of these things. Do you have open-ended questions? Are they attached to your values? What does all of this look like? Same deal if you do an applicant tracking system in your HR payroll software. Well, do you do a phone interview? Do you do a questionnaire? Do you send declinations out to people when they don't move forward? Do you screen for minimum qualifications? What are the minimum qualifications for each role? Where is that information found? Do you have job descriptions? If you don't have job descriptions, then how can we do good job postings? Because we don't really know what the job's going to do. So that's exactly the same thing as utilizing AI in general in your human resources function. The difference is this. If you are contacting an HR payroll technology vendor, they can make recommendations, but they can't say yay or nay. If you are working with AI, you can say to AI, I don't have a process for this. Can you benchmark best practices for organizations located in the state of X in X industry that are around the size of X in top line or bottom line revenue that have roughly X amount of employees, and give me some recommendations that are also legally compliant, both state and federally, that I can make a decision on? And then it gives you the data, the recommendations, and then you still have to say, this is right for my business and my culture, or it's not. And here's how we would change it. And then, how do we create a process for this, and what technology would we utilize? And is this something we can automate inside of AI, or is this something a person needs to do? And how do we stay consistent with it? And do we roll this out as a policy to employees? How do we internally communicate about this? There's all of these aspects. AI can get you further because it can do the research for you as well and give you some recommendations. So start thinking about that. But if you don't have the foundation built out, if you don't have documented processes right now, If it all lives in your head, then we're going to kind of shelf the HR piece and we're going to first document our processes with the AI. So that's your first like readiness piece, readiness thought. Okay, second one, do you know your core people numbers? And I'm talking like, do you know your turnover data? Do you know your cost per hire data? All of that data is useful because if AI doesn't know how you're operating or what your business currently looks like, it might lead you astray. So it's good to feed your people data into your artificial intelligence so that way it's answering based on an organization that operates like X, Y, and Z. Because if you're asking a question, what's a good employee reward and recognition program? Well, it's going to give you best practice and it's probably going to pull down something that Google does or whatever. Well, if they don't know if you're operating on a shoestring budget and you just did a layoff 2 years ago and your turnover is 92% or, like whatever all of this data looks like, it's going to lead you astray. So do you have the data that you can feed into AI? And I would say you do have the data. But a lot of folks aren't measuring HR metrics, which, by the way, are finance and business metrics, but they're not measuring those because they don't think about it or they don't have somebody owning that or saying grace over it. So then they don't know what the data is to feed AI. So AI is giving accurate responses based on how you're operating as an organization. So that's the second kind of AI readiness piece. Do you have your people data? And what does that look like? The third is your employee data clean and is it in one place or is it scattered across inboxes and OneDrive and people's desktop and all of that kind of stuff? Now, here's the beautiful thing. AI can help you clean all of that up if you give it access. And of course, not unfettered access. You need to, I grant it every single time I want a project done like that. I make it ask me if I grant it instead of just giving it unfettered access. There's a million different safety things and we'll get into that. And you need to do your own research on that as well. Don't just take my word for it. But it's going to help you get all of that together first. Because if it's not all together, now your project is not AI and HR. Your project is data and record management. And that's okay. AI can help with that. But that's what you're going to have to go back to. Because if you don't have one place, let's say your OneDrive or your Google Drive or your intranet or whatever, where you're storing all your HR documentation, if you don't have one HR payroll system that's a source of truth or whatever, however your storage looks like, if it's all over the place across people and your CFO has some data and you as the business owner have some data and then your office manager would have some data and then you got to get some data from your benefits broker because you just trust that they capture it all and you don't actually pull down any data from that. And same thing with your 401k. Like if it's all over the place and you don't have a good record retention strategy for your people information, that's the first project. You're not really going to be able to do anything with the information you have because you don't even know where it's all at until you find it all and streamline it. And then now we can start reading the information and doing things with this data and making it actionable. So that's the third thing. How clean is your data? Fourth, do you have any rules about what your team can and cannot put into AI? And this is just a simple one-page policy that would count. You need to have some kind of rules and parameters around it, though, because if you don't, some people aren't going to ever use it because they're not comfortable with it. They don't like it. They're frustrated. They're mad that another data center popped up and, like they've got a moral or ethical issue against that. So they're not going to utilize it or whatever it is. They're a slow adopter. I don't care what it is. But if you don't have rules, a lot of people think then things get dangerous, and that is an implication. But the other side of that is if you don't have rules and standards, it's not going to get utilized, just like any other technology that you roll out. If you are rolling out a training technology or a CRM or, whatever you're rolling out in your business, what's adoption look like? Well, it's not going to be any different when it comes to AI. Some people are going to adopt it. Some people are going to adopt it and go too far with it. Some people aren't going to adopt it at all. And some people are never going to understand. So what's the policy look like? How are you going to utilize it? And training. Okay. Like don't forget the training piece. That's huge. And that's a place where HR should be making an impact on the business is the learning and development aspect around it. HR should be making an impact in all of these areas, but knowing what the expectations are, what the policies are around it, and then how people are going to get trained, and then what accountability is going to look like. We need that down. So that's the fourth kind of readiness. If you don't have a process or a policy around that, you're going to need that first before you go rolling out a tool. And FYI, you have people in your organization who are already using it. You better get that policy. You better get that policy going right now, whether you're in HR or not. And then the fifth readiness assessment piece is if AI drafted a decision tomorrow that is an HR decision, is there a human who owns the final call? And this is a big one. And you might think like, I mean, obviously, we already have people making calls in the business. Okay, well, who's making the calls on HR? And here's how I know this is a problem. I have my client loads around 11 clients right now. And I would say, in general, the vast majority of those, I'd say 9 out of 11, don't have one HR decision maker that I'm going to. I am the HR decision maker. They're like, yeah, you need to figure that out, Kerri, which is what I'm getting paid for. But I need to obviously like run it by them because I'm an external consultant. And usually there isn't one person that is saying grace over that. Even as the business owner, I sense trepidation on who can make the call. So the same is going to happen with AI. If you're going to AI for certain HR things, you still need someone who says grace internally. There's a person that needs to be a part of this process. So who owns HR decisions at the end of the day? Because AI is going to say, oh, in your state and in your sector, here's some recommendations, here's some benchmarks, here's some data with sources cited, all of these things. But you still have to, at the end of the day, say, and that's appropriate for my business, and we are going to implement it and in this time frame and roll it out in this way based on the recommendations. So somebody still has to say it. So that's your 5-part HR AI readiness piece. So I want you to really like reflect on those, talk about those inside of your business and just see kind of where you're at. And I'm talking about HR, but you could apply that roughly to any department, right? So if you are just navigating AI implementation and adoption in your business in general, those are good questions to think through. You can manipulate them to any department. I'm just focused on HR, you know. So why is the readiness aspect of this a financial issue? Or is it a financial issue? And I would say absolutely yes. We're talking about dirty data. We're talking about time spent. We're talking about consistency. We're talking about potential of discrimination because we're going down the wrong path and we haven't fed AI the right data, and then it makes the wrong recommendation to, I wanted to say decision, but the human needs to make the final call, but it might lead us astray. There's a lot of different things. An AI tool trained on messy data is going to make expensive mistakes, right? At scale. Maybe point you toward bad hires, maybe mispriced offers, maybe a policy gap that could become a settlement. HR metrics are finance metrics, and AI multiplies whatever foundation it's sitting on, whether it's good or bad. So let's say you put in your compensation data, but you miss the whole philosophy behind it, or the last time you did raises, or why you pay at a certain level, or whatever that looks like. And AI starts recommending that you give increases to this amount because it's benchmarking in Silicon Valley and you're in Ohio, whatever it is. I'm just trying to give you an example that there are financial implications if you aren't doing your AI integration correctly. And, messy data in, messy data out. That's the way that's going to look. I've been kind of talking about this, but I also want to make sure that I mention there's an obvious need for humans in your business. And when you hear like the big players who are talking about, I've got 50 AI agents or AI employees, what they're really saying is they have employees and then they have AI, let's say agents or subordinates to those employees. They're human employees. They've got AI subordinates to the human employees. And so you set up this process, this agent, this employee, however you want to talk about it inside of your business. And again, that's part of the policy. How are you going to treat this? I haven't named my AI agents, but I certainly I've got projects. Then I've got scheduled tasks, and I actually have a daily dashboard where I used to completely live off my calendar, and now I live off my AI dashboard that I'm tracking my protein intake on this dashboard. I'm tracking my movement, my daily movement on this dashboard, but then it also has the tasks that I need to accomplish each day on the dashboard. And based on the tasks, there's some of them that it'll be like, do you want me to run it now? And it'll be like, once I get done with this episode, I will take the transcript, and there's already a task on there waiting for me. I saw it before I came up here to the studio to record. It'll say, do you want me to run the transcript and put your, elements together that you need on a Monday? And I essentially have it draft me an email about my podcast. I have it draft me show notes to send over to my production company. And I have it draft me 2 blog posts, one for my personal website and one for my Salt and Light Advisors website. Now, I'm reading all of those. I'm making sure that I've trained it on my voice. I gave it the whole manuscripts of my books that I wrote and a ton of emails. And obviously my transcripts, which is exactly how I talk. I'm not reading a script here, so I've trained it on my voice, but there's things that it does that I'm like, well, I don't like that. That's not how I talk at all. And I give it feedback back like, hey, you said this is what I actually posted on my blog because I don't talk like that. And it'll say, oh, I'm learning your language. Thank you. Or I'll say like, lock the sentence, lock in the way that I'm responding. But I am a huge part of all of this. We're not just outsourcing to AI entirely. Just like I used to have an admin and I used to have a marketing person, I am doing tiny portions of those people's jobs now because my AI agents are doing, a large portion of those people's jobs. But now I'm the decision maker. I don't have that marketing person to be the decision maker. I don't have an admin to be the decision maker. So it did kind of add a little bit back to my personal plate. So you've got to think about that. Like, what human manages the AI aspects? It's not like you can just turn the tasks on, the scheduled tasks, which they're amazing tasks, but like you can't just turn them on and nobody's watching them. I don't have my blog posts go live. I have it put them in as drafts, and then I'm reading them, I'm reviewing them, and then I'm choosing when they get published. So there's a major aspect to this. I think some people think, oh, AI is just taking over people's jobs, but like a person has to manage the AI. There's a huge human aspect. And you're ready for all of this if you have clean data, documented processes, a simple use policy, and a human owning every real decision. And once that's in place, an AI is genuinely a force multiplier for a team. It's been huge for my business. I've told you about the cost savings, the time savings, and it's just elevated my game overall because let's say my marketing person didn't really know like constantly what was trending or, what hashtags she was having to do research. Like AI has naturally got that baked into its task. And so it's elevating the game for me, but it never owns judgment. It never owns coaching or a call that affects somebody's livelihood. That's on you still. That's on me still. We still have to run this technology. That would be like thinking when you pull up to a gas station, the gas pumps itself. It does a lot. There's the little mechanism that you put your card, but you still have to put your card in. And for me, I've still got to like unlock my tank and then unscrew the thing and then choose which gas that I want and then push the button and, put the pump in. And then I have to wait and the pump doesn't go back into the mechanism by itself. I have to do that. Same deal. It's a very similar concept, very similar. So there are things that will stay human. There's a lot of things that it can do for you. I'm really excited to get further into this series. This is just the very beginning. I just wanted to talk about your readiness. I've got 11 episodes that are coming, getting deeper, much, much deeper. I mean, over 11 episodes, obviously, we're digging in on how exactly to utilize AI in your HR department. Or I'm assuming a lot of you don't have an HR department. If you're listening to this podcast, you found me because I do HR for small to mid-sized businesses. So you might be the business owner or the one-stop shop or the office manager. Maybe you're not an HR person at all. And so you're like, it's going to be on me to be implementing this. Yes. And that's what we're going to talk about. Did a little bit of research on stats, and you don't want to miss these pieces. These are very compelling. Here's what I read. 54% of organizations still haven't adopted any AI of any kind in human resources. 54%. That's a lot. And they have no immediate plans to. But 92% of executive leaders expect more AI in the workforce this year. Isn't that interesting? So senior leaders, 92% of senior leaders are expecting it, but 54% of organizations have adopted zero of it in human resources, which is crazy. If it's happening in other areas of your business, you have to put it into HR because HR is the front door. So if you're representing why a person would want to come to an organization, but you're not utilizing any of the tools that that person's going to get hired to utilize in your business, are you tracking with me here? That's weird. That's weird. That's the same reason why I harp on not doing manual benefits enrollment and not doing manual onboarding, like the paper aspect, because it's like, if this person's going to come into a tech role, if they're a developer for you or whatever it looks like, and they're expected to use a CRM and they use technology every single day, but they had to fill out paperwork to get started in your business, that's an oxymoron. Like that's making you look silly and it's not aligned in your business, which speaks to your culture right then and there. That data that I just mentioned, that 54% of organizations, I found that from SHRM. It's the state of AI in HR in 2026, and that surveyed a couple thousand HR pros. So relevant data. Another one I saw, only around 30% of organizations have any AI guidelines or policy in place. And you know what? I could target right now and start putting out ads and saying like, let me write your AI policies, but I'll do that if I'm doing an HR audit for you and helping you with your handbook, but I'm not like dying to write your policies. You should get an attorney for that. And they just put out the most boring stuff ever. But I'm just saying, we're going to get into the policy piece. So stick around, make sure that you are subscribing to my channel if you haven't already, because I'm going to go over my recommendations. I'm not an attorney, but I'm going to go over my recommendations on what you need in an AI policy here in a few episodes. And you're not going to want to miss that. AI use at work, though, in general, not in HR, but just AI use at work jumped from 21% to 40% of employees in 2 years. So the daily use doubled. So it's already in your building, ready or not. So you need policies around it. You need expectations around it. Another piece of data that I saw, replacing one employee, which we already know this data, replacing one employee costs 1/2 to 2 times their annual salary. Voluntary turnover costs U.S. businesses around $1 trillion a year. 52% of that's preventable. So when it comes to the HR metrics and utilizing AI for those, that's going to be very, very powerful. It's going to be very helpful. One of my recent episodes, I was talking about HR metrics in particular and things that you can do to predict that someone's leaving. And if you're not tracking, let's say, absenteeism, then you probably don't know that that individual in this department over here has used up all of their PTO over the last 6 months. And that tells me that they're getting ready to quit. But if you're not tracking absenteeism or PTO utilization, then you probably don't know that. And they're really doing that if you don't have a PTO payout policy upon termination once notice is given. And so they're going to use it all up before they leave. There's a ton of data that you have access to if you have an HR payroll software or if you're tracking it, even in spreadsheets. But if you're not analyzing the data and using your HR metrics, because they are, remember, finance metrics, they're business metrics, they're foundational to your organization. AI can help you take that data and do some analytics on it and tell you where you need to be looking. Gosh dang, right there. That's so powerful. But you've got to have clean data. You've got to have access to the data. And then the last piece of research that I saw, only 15% of workers think AI will eliminate their job within 5 years. One of the things when I started to think about this episode is I didn't want to scare anybody. I see, what's trending right now on YouTube is like, AI is going to take your job. Top 15 jobs that are going to be eliminated based on artificial intelligence. Like just all why it's harder for college grads to start out now because of AI. Like there's all of these. It's real. It's reality, but it feels kind of scare tacticy, and that's not my style. So I thought that was interesting. Only 15% of workers really think that AI is going to take their jobs. And I would say, is it going to take their jobs? No. Is it going to impact their jobs? Hell yeah. It is for sure going to impact their jobs. So we all need to keep an eye on it. I want to talk about a couple of ways that I've been talking about a lot of different ways, but I want to highlight a couple of ways that I've used AI with my clients because I've used it in my business, obviously, in my invoicing, in my marketing, in my proposals. There's a ton of ways, email responses, ton of ways that I've utilized AI on the business side as a consultant. But I want to talk about HR ways that I've used it with clients because I think my hope is that this will help you start thinking through some of the things. So I was looking at some data. I was looking at turnover data for a client over the course of a couple of years, and I fed AI headcount, average salary, and separations, and it built a model for me. And it essentially told me what their cost was when they lose an employee. And we talk a lot about like, oh, it costs, half of an annual salary or two-thirds of an annual salary. I want to know what it actually costs in your business. So that way, the next time a manager says they don't have time to properly train someone or coach someone, we have some data to say you're costing the company this amount of money when you're not investing in your people. And that's exactly how I talk to my clients. I want to use that data and then I want to use it to help them hold their managers accountable. That's just one way. But so that's what I did. And I had it do some financial modeling for me once I put that data in there. I'm the one who decides what to include in that and what the number actually means and what we're going to do to address it and how to roll out that data and all of that. But it helps me analyze the data. Another thing that I use it for, I do compensation data studies on my clients all the time. And I have clients give me a spreadsheet and it's got every employee's name, their start date, what their current salary is, if they're exempt or non-exempt, the date of the last pay increase, what the pay increase was and why the pay increase, performance review, promotion, what have you. And then I've got a software that I pay for that helps me pull down based off of your geographic location, your revenue size, your employee count in your industry. It helps me pull down the 10th, 25th, mean, 75th, and 90th percentile. And then I physically put that into the spreadsheet. I add those, columns to your spreadsheet. And then I take a look at what the person's making and then I plot them, you know, are they're getting paid in the 25th percentile or they're getting paid in the mean or whatever. Once I have done that whole exercise, so I do all of that manually myself, then I take that spreadsheet, I upload it into AI and I say, based off of the data that I put in here, what trends are you seeing? And are there any red or yellow flags that we should be noticing? And it helps me to take a look at, like, to really hone in and take a look at what we're seeing. Now, I obviously can see some trends. Like if I've highlighted the majority of the pay, they've landed in the 25th percentile, I can see like, okay, in general, they pay the 25th percentile. So I'm going to be asking them, are you trying to pay below average benchmark for this role? And is that because you have, great flexibility, you've got really solid medical insurance or whatever that is, or these are easy to recruit roles, or you've got great retention, or when you're paying in the 90th percentile, I know I'm going to ask you, like, is this a hard to recruit for role? And so therefore you're paying higher for it or whatever. So I'm obviously looking at that, but AI helps to point out some trends that it's seeing in the data. And that kind of gets me started down the path and makes it a little bit shorter of a turnaround time for me. And it just like sparks the conversation between me and the client. And then I essentially take what I learned from the client and then I put that back into AI and say, based on, our discussion, what steps would you recommend taking next or give me an outline for the next steps? And it's just super helpful. So it kind of helps me move forward. But my favorite way, you guys, that I use it though, and if you're not using it for this right now, I'm telling you, this is a game changer right now. I don't care if you're in AI, in HR, or what you're doing. Go to your email inbox to your oldest email, open it up, copy and paste it. If you're in Outlook, if you're in Gmail, you can actually hook up your email directly to your AI. That's cool. But I don't use Gmail for my business. I use Microsoft Outlook. Take that email, copy it, put it into AI and say, I have been letting this email sit in my inbox for X amount of time and I need to respond to it, but it's taking some time. I need you to help me think through this so I can start mapping out a response to this person. I'm not asking for them to respond. They don't have any context. I'm just saying, like, help me with the next steps. And I do that all of the time to kind of help get me going. Or I'll say, what questions do you need to ask me to help me start developing a response? That's a great one to do with AI. And it just starts helping you think through what you think about their questions or their request or whatever. And here's an example. I had somebody reach out to me and they asked me to interview for MSN. Now, I would love to be on MSN. That's a great platform with a lot of viewers, but I never pay to be featured. That's kind of been, I don't want to say a rule for me because maybe the right opportunity would come around and I would change my mind on that. But I've been in Forbes. I've been in a lot of different Inc. I've been featured in a lot of different places and I've never had to pay to be featured. And I see people who do pay to get featured and I can kind of tell. Anyway, I digress. But I got this opportunity with MSN and I was like, gosh, this would be a pretty good opportunity. But they were saying it was going to cost $500. Now that's cheaper than usually the pitches that I get. I always just decline the other ones, but I was like, $500, that's not very much money for me to get on MSN. Is this something that I want to do? So I just opened up Claude and I said, here's the opportunity. I generally say no to any time I have to pay for promotion in this way because one, I think I could use that money in a different way if I want. I've never paid for advertising. And I'm not trying to like say like, oh, so I'm cool and I'm trying to never do that. I never have so far. And so is this where I want to start this with? And, help me think through. Do I want to change my philosophy? Am I willing to pay for this? Would this get me leverage in some way? And if it will, help me to think through it. And Claude essentially was like, based off of what they're offering, here's what the potential reach would be. Here's what I think that would get you, and it made a recommendation. It said, don't do it, stick with what you've thought because you could take that $500 and put it into ads or, a number of different things and get a lot more with it. So it just helped me to think through it because it was sitting in my inbox and the guy pinged me again. And I was like, gosh, I just haven't really had the time to think that through. And so it just helped me start thinking it through. And it can pull in data and research that I don't have access to or don't even really know what to put into Google at that time. So just some things to think about. Real quick, let me run back through this HR readiness, AI readiness piece, just to get it back in your mind. Is there a documented process that AI could follow, or does it all live in your head? Do you know your core people numbers? Is your employee data clean and in one place? Do you have any rules for how your team can or can't use AI, any policy? And if AI drafted a decision tomorrow, who's the person who would say, yes, that's accurate, or no, we need to change it? That's kind of your HR AI readiness assessment. So think that through, figure out how you want to jump in. If you want to talk to me about implementing it in your organization, I'd be happy to discuss that with you. I recommend that you first build your HR foundation out before you start making it fancy with AI. AI can help you do it though. And if you want to take a look at what your HR foundation is currently tracking at, do my it's a mini HR audit. So go to saltmindadvisors.com/HR audit. It's miniature. I have a full blown audit that I do for clients all of the time. I usually do at least one of those a month, sometimes two. But if you want to do the mini one for free, it takes you about 10 minutes. It'll spit you out a score. And then you can decide based on that, like, okay, actually, I want to do the full blown one with Kerri. Let's move forward. Or I'm sitting pretty good. Or, I can tell the areas that I need to focus on. I'm going to go focus on those. So do that. saltmindadvisors.com/HR audit. And if you're ready to get into your HR foundations or your HR operating system, or your strategic HR pieces, don't forget I've got my coursework available, saltmindadvisors.com/resources. And I've got really affordable courses. They're under $100. You can go on. They've each got 4 modules or more. Those modules come along with teaching in a specific area from me on areas like hiring, onboarding, HR law, performance management, disciplinary actions, culture. I run the gamut of human resources there. So I've got about an hour teaching for each of those. And then I've got free downloadable tools, templates, resources, scripts to help you apply them in your business today. So I recommend you go give that a look. And of course, I've got my book, The HR Easy Button. This is the one focused on HR foundations. It's already published and out. You can find it on Amazon, HR Easy Button book, or I'm doing the operating book next. I've already written it. It's in editing and it should be out to the masses in the next couple of months. This episode, I think, will come out in August or so. And hopefully that book's going to be out by the end of the year. And then in 2027, my strategy book will be out. So all 3 in my 3-part series will be out hopefully by the end of next year, which is really, really exciting. So if you haven't followed my podcast or haven't subscribed, I recommend you do so. Don't forget to share this with somebody that you think it would be helpful to. I would be so grateful for that. And also, anytime you share it, anytime you subscribe, you hit the like button, you write me a review, you leave me a comment, it helps the algorithm to push my podcast up just a little bit. I'm a little guy in the podcast world, but I've been putting out consistent episodes every single Tuesday since January of 2024. So I'm showing up. I would love it if you would help me get into the hands of other people And without that engagement, I just don't get ranked in the algorithm. It's really hard for people to find me. So please interact with my show. It would mean so much. So don't forget to run that audit, that assessment kind of through your mind. Maybe talk to your leadership team about it. If you want to reach out to me, if it all sounds too complicated, reach out to me, saltnightadvisors.com/contact, and we'll talk more about it. Listen, I know that when it comes to implementing AI in any area of your business, but it's specifically in HR, it can feel really chaotic, but the work is worth it. So don't waste the chaos, embrace it. I'll see you next week.